I just had twins. I'm expecting a $20,000 baby shower gift, by the way," Sally said with a triumphant voice. I responded loudly to her. "Okay. I'll go with my husband, the real estate mogul worth $1 billion. "What?" I could hear Sally's incredulous voice over the phone. She must have heard from our parents that my spouse was some nondescript common man. "What do you mean $1 billion? "Exactly what I said." Sally seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but chuckle. Then Sally, catching on, retorted, "That can't be right, because—" "Well, let's talk about it in person, including what you did that time." "Wait a sec, Daniela." "Then, I'll see you tomorrow." I unilaterally said so and hung up the phone. Sally tried calling me back several times, but I ignored all her calls. "I'm looking forward to tomorrow." Imagining Sally's regretful face, I laughed out loud. "My name is Daniela. I'm a 38-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Bob. A housekeeper does all our housework, so I live a life of elegance every day. But the truth is, Bob is my second husband. I divorced my first husband 6 years ago. I met Bob later, while working at a restaurant, and we got remarried. My parents had arranged my marriage to my first husband, Henry, because they liked him. He was the president of a company that did business with my parents' company. I had no say in the matter, and the marriage was decided the day after our arranged meeting. Arranged marriages were rare at the time, but as the eldest daughter expected to inherit the family business, I wasn't surprised. Thus, our marriage was anything but sweet. Henry, a president of a company making millions a year, hardly came home and was often out playing around. Even when he did come home, he would just make a disgusted face at me and go straight to the bedroom. It was around that time that I was suddenly called back to my parents' house. "Daniela, you should get a divorce." "What? Why all of a sudden?" I was confused by my mother's sudden suggestion. Henry's business was thriving. There was no benefit to divorcing now. Could it be that she was pained by my situation? Holding on to that hope, I was shocked by what I saw next. "Why are Henry and Sally together?" "Sally is my sister. 10 years my junior, and dearly beloved by our parents. They practically ignored me in favor of her. And there she was, walking into the room, arm in arm with Henry. "Hey, sis. I've taken a liking to Henry. So, I'm taking him, okay? He's not something you can just take, Sally." "But, Henry likes me better, right?" Sally said, leaning on Henry. Then Henry looked at me with a smug smile. "Younger is always better, and Sally is prettier. I think she'd make a better president's wife." "How could you? Mom?" Feeling like I was about to be discarded for being older, I turned to my mother for help. Raised strictly as the eldest daughter, I believed my mother loved me. "That's why I said you should divorce quickly. Sally wants him, so give him to her." "How could you?" I was dumbfounded. Though my mother had always favored Sally, I thought she would be on my side at a time like this. Then, my father spoke up quietly. "Just get the divorce over with. Once you're divorced, get out." "Even you, Dad?" With tears blurring my vision, I wrote the divorce papers. After packing only my belongings as my parents had ordered, I was quickly kicked out of the house. "You're gonna have a hard time from now on? Here, take this as a sort of alimony. Sally is so kind. Be grateful." The two of them mockingly threw a bundle of cash at me. Holding the cash, I was at a loss. What am I gonna do now? As a housewife, I had no way to earn a living. I had trained to be a bride but had never even had a part-time job. For now, I decided to go to a hotel and think about my next steps. First, I decided to secure a place to live. I moved to the next town over and visited a real estate agent. Thanks to some savings I had, I could easily rent a place suitable for one person. I absolutely didn't want to use the alimony thrown at me by those two. Fueled by a desire for revenge, I rented a one-bedroom place and took a moment to breathe. Next was finding a job, but it wasn't easy. Then, I received a call from Sally on my smartphone. Didn't you know Henry has influence over this whole area? No matter where you apply, you won't get hired. How could this happen? I was at a loss. Just as Sally said, I couldn't find employment. Without a job, my savings would eventually run out. I decided to live in a town far away. The town I moved to was peaceful, with the scent of the sea breeze. There, I was hired by a small diner and could work and live there. Hey, give me some booze. Right away. I'd like some dishes over here. All right. Though I was inexperienced, the customers were all kind to me as I served food. Gradually, I started doing more, and eventually, I was referred to as the face of the diner. Daniela's smile gives me the strength to face tomorrow. Aren't you gonna marry again, Daniela? I'm not really. What a waste, right? Being young, I was often encouraged to remarry, but I always dodged the question. The last thing I wanted was to end up with another man like Henry. Daniela, can I get a beer? Bob! How was your day? Coming right up. While everyone teased me about remarrying, Bob, a regular, never joined in. I found our conversations comforting and looked forward to his visits. It was after 3 years in this town that Bob asked me out. How about we go see the ocean? Huh? I mean, it's right in front of us. Seeing Bob flustered for once made me chuckle. I didn't mind at all. I accepted his invitation. Our first date was just a walk on the beach in front of the diner, but we talked about many things. Bob shared that he had lost his parents early and was living alone in this town that his parents loved. I talked about my family and Henry. Bob cried for me. I thought, maybe I should have cried like this too. Watching the tears flow from Bob's eyes, I felt a deep connection. Over time, we went out more and eventually started dating. Honestly, I can't even remember who said I love you first. But we naturally started dating. And about a year later, Bob proposed to me. I want to spend my life with you. Is that a proposal? That's the plan. I smiled brightly at Bob, who lacked confidence, and accepted his proposal. Then we got married. I had no intention of telling my parents or my sister, but Bob suggested we at least inform my parents, so I contacted them for the first time in 4 years and decided to go back home. Oh, you're alive? Remarrying? Go ahead, but we won't give you any support. If you're going to remarry such a pathetic man, don't ever come back. I was furious, my face turning red in front of Bob. Indeed, Bob isn't one for luxury. Even so, he was wearing a high-end suit today. Despite that, I didn't want to have any more to do with parents who would say such things, and I was about to speak out in anger. Then, I'll be taking your daughter with me. We won't contact you again, nor will we ask for any assistance. Bob. My parents were shocked by Bob's forthright attitude but quickly became angry, calling it rude. Bob, with a smile, took my hand and we left my parents' house. I never thought it would be that bad. I'm sorry for making you go through that. No, don't worry about it. I actually feel a bit relieved, I said, smiling at Bob. Bob relaxed his shoulders, relieved by my expression. And then, we went back to our new home. After a while, the number of anonymous calls increased. I ignored all of them and consulted Bob. Let's ignore them. But it's creepy, so let's go buy a new number tomorrow. Yeah, thank you. I was very grateful to Bob for quickly taking care of it. The next morning, Bob made time and we went to change our phone number. Then, the anonymous calls stopped completely. I was relieved. However, shortly after, I started receiving calls from unknown numbers. Hello? The caller would hang up without saying anything. It felt very creepy, so I consulted Bob again. Let's just ignore any calls from unknown numbers, Bob suggested, and I ignored all such calls. Eventually, the calls stopped, and I gradually forgot about them. Then one day, I received a call from my parents' house. Thinking I had forgotten to remove it from my phone book after cutting ties, I reluctantly answered. But it wasn't my mother on the phone, it was Sally. Hello, Daniela? How are you? Sally. Don't sound so scary. It was inevitable that my voice would reveal my reluctance to talk to someone I wished never to speak with again. First, I decided to confirm the most pressing question. How did you get my number? It was easy to find. You know, I have money. Her tone convinced me that Sally hadn't changed at all. I was about to hang up when Sally cheerfully started talking. I had twins. I'm expecting a $20,000 baby shower gift, by the way. Sally said with a triumphant voice. I responded loudly to her. Okay. I'll go with my husband, the real estate mogul worth $1 billion. What? I could hear Sally's incredulous voice over the phone. She must have heard from our parents that my spouse was some nondescript common man. What do you mean $1 billion? Exactly what I said. Sally seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but chuckle. Then Sally, catching on, retorted. That can't be right, because… Well, let's talk about it in person, including what you did that time, Sally. Wait a sec. Then, I'll see you tomorrow. I said unilaterally and hung up the phone. Sally tried calling me back several times, but I ignored all her calls. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I waited for Bob to come home and explained the situation to him. Then, Bob smiled and made a suggestion. I'll go in my usual attire. I nodded in agreement. And I decided to wear my usual clothes and go back to my parents' house. I'm home. Oh, you're back. Did you bring your husband? Sally came running to the entrance with a smile, but she was surprised to see our outfits. And no wonder, our clothes were bought from a no-brand store for the common folk. Both the t-shirts and the pants cost about $20 each. What's with those shabby clothes? Aren't you supposed to be a real estate mogul? I returned her words with a smile. Then Sally interpreted it in her own way and made a mocking expression. So, it was a lie after all. You can't hide it even if you try to show off. Oh, it's not a lie. I said, pointing to the screen of my smartphone. It displayed Bob's name and photo. Sally stared at it intently before exclaiming. In that major real estate group? The president of that company? No way! It's not a lie. Sally glared at me with frustration. Then she pointed at our clothes and cursed. Then why are you wearing such shabby clothes? I made a mocking expression in response to Sally. Because we have to match the financial situation of the family, don't we? What? Are you saying our family has fallen? No, we just judged that this level of courtesy was appropriate. Bob and I always dress formally or in visitation attire when visiting someone's house. We have never once made the mistake of wearing t-shirts and jeans to someone's house. That's why we deliberately chose these outfits this time. There were 2 reasons for this. First, to mislead Sally like earlier and take the wind out of her sails. Seeing her frustrated expression meant it was a success. And the second reason. I started walking towards the living room. Bob followed me, and then Sally chased after us. Having Bob by my side makes me feel incredibly supported. I energetically opened the living room door. How noisy. Sally, you should open it more gracefully like you. What's with that cheap look? Really, I'm disappointed in you. As soon as I opened the door, my parents said that, and I couldn't help but laugh. My parents looked at me as if I were something dubious as I continued to chuckle. Sally was saying something about marrying a rich man, but it seems it was just Daniela trying to look good. Yeah, that's all you can manage with such cheap clothes. Don't cross our threshold again. My parents freely said whatever they wanted, but I just smiled and retorted. Judging people by their clothes is probably why your business is failing, isn't it? What? My parents were taken aback by what I said. But Sally looked confused. I decided to explain it to her clearly. Last year was in the red, wasn't it? I heard this fiscal year is looking dubious too. How is it? It's none of your business. I would like to say it's none of my business, but unfortunately, we're still blood related. My father glared at me, frustrated. His expression was so much like Sally's, and I remembered that I take after my mother, and Sally takes after our father. Actually, since Henry married Sally, my father's company has been on a decline. Bob checked after Sally called, and the performance has been worsening, far from recovering. The second reason we wore low-priced clothes was this. We wanted to let them underestimate us first, so when they learned about the bankruptcy, the impact would be greater. As my parents glared at me, I continued speaking with a sigh. I plan to renounce any inheritance when the time comes. You were planning to inherit? You money grubber! All Mom and Dad's money is mine. Sally, who had been quiet, interrupted and snapped at me. It seems she didn't understand what I said. I could explain it to her politely, but honestly, it's bothersome. However, the conversation wouldn't progress if I didn't explain. Just then, Bob succinctly spoke up for me. Your parents' company is about to go bankrupt. What? Sally looked surprised and glanced at her parents, who awkwardly looked away. Then, unbelievably, Sally clung to Bob's arm. So, Bob, will you cover for them? In return, you can have your way with me, just kidding. Despite Sally's light-hearted words, tension ran between me and Bob. Bob sighed heavily, forcibly removed Sally, and spoke up. Can you stop? That's really creepy. Creepy? Me? Yes, creepy. Bob emphasized, leaving no room for doubt. Sally staggered away from Bob, visibly shocked, and glared at me with teary eyes. How dare you say such rude things to me? I'm prettier than that plain sister. That's impossible. Daniela is slimmer, her skin is clearer, and beyond her physical appearance, her heart is much purer. Bob listed my good qualities, my cooking skills, intelligence, compassion, and my honesty. Hearing this made me feel awkward, as if I were a perfect human being. I tried to stop Bob by lightly tugging on his sleeve twice. Then, Bob turned to me with a smile. This modesty is another charm that sets you apart. What? Sally stomped her feet in frustration. Sally had grown noticeably larger since I last saw her, likely gaining around 44 pounds. Her once praised beautiful face was now marred by acne and blemishes, far from her past beauty. This was probably due to overindulgence by our parents and a decrease in metabolism with age. I sighed inwardly at Sally's lack of self-control. However, our parents began to defend her. Sally just got a bit rounder after giving birth. She'll get back to her shape in no time. No, this is clearly due to an unhealthy lifestyle. Stay out of it. My mother shouted at me, her face turning red. The mother I once thought absolute, now, after 6 years, didn't scare me at all. I then shared another truth. By the way, there's a possibility that those children aren't Henry's. What, is that true? Henry's voice came from behind at the same time as my words. Turning around, I saw Henry holding 2 babies. Long time no see, Henry. That doesn't matter. What's this all about? Henry approached me angrily. But Bob intervened. Then, on my behalf, Bob started explaining. I heard about Henry from Daniela, and on our way here, I had a contact look into it. Didn't expect to catch a tail in half a day, though. Bob took out his smartphone, showing a photo of a man and a woman entering a hotel hand in hand. Seeing the photo, Henry exclaimed, You're still involved with him. Henry then started talking about something nobody asked for. Right after we got married, she cheated on me with that man in the photo. She said it was just once, so I forgave her. Henry glared at Sally, who then glared back and retorted. I forgave you, yet you dare to act high and mighty after becoming a subsidiary of our company. What? You insisted that was the best move. Sally and Henry bickered, each blaming the other. Apparently, shortly after their marriage, Henry's company became a subsidiary of my father's, which quickly led to its downfall. I should have never divorced Daniela. Are you saying Daniela is better than me? Impossible. As Sally hysterically yelled, Henry raised his voice too. Of course. Daniela never complained about my affairs, and I was free to do as I pleased. If it were Daniela's child, she would take care of it, so I wouldn't have to. Realizing what he said, Henry suddenly looked enlightened. That's it. Daniela, let's remarry. It was fate for us to be together. Henry knelt before me, delighted with his conclusion, which made me step back in disgust. Then Bob stepped between me and Henry. Daniela is my wife. A remarriage with you is out of the question. What? Get out of the way! Henry shouted irritably at Bob. From behind Bob, I firmly responded to Henry. Remarrying you is absolutely impossible. I don't want your children. Oh, right, you couldn't have children. Well, it's still a no. What? What do you mean I can't have children? Henry looked dumbfounded at us. Sally and our parents had the same expression as Henry. I decided to explain to them. Back when I was still married to Henry, I went to the doctor. I had some tests done. Don't you remember? Oh yeah, I remember being dragged to the doctor. But it was your fault, wasn't it? Henry seemed eager to blame me, repeatedly insisting that he was healthy. I confronted Henry with a truth he had been avoiding for 6 years. The one who can't have children is you, Henry. That's a lie. Then whose kids are these? They're mine, right? Unfortunately, they're not your children. Upon hearing this, Henry slumped in defeat. A maid hurried to take the babies from Henry's hands. And there was Sally, with her mouth wide open in shock. So, Sally, it turns out they're not Henry's children. How could you not tell me about such a defect? If you had told me properly, by now. Sally began to shift the blame spectacularly. I just listened silently until she calmed down. Then smiled and said, You made your bed, now lie in it. What did you say? Then give me Bob. Bob himself already said no. Then give me money. Family should help each other out. Can you believe she said that? I was irked by Sally's words. There was never any family support for me. When times were tough, instead of solidarity, I only received cold shoulders. Unfortunately, I'm not part of your family. I am too. Come on, sis. Don't be like that. Sally's words were annoying, but arguing back wouldn't help. I took a deep breath. Just as I was about to reply, my mother spoke up first. Daniela, I'm sorry for everything. But we're really in trouble. If you really have money, won't you help us? That's right, Sally is correct. Family helps each other out. Let's forget everything that happened before. What are these people even talking about? I was utterly astounded. Forgiveness is something the wronged party can offer, not something the wrongdoers should demand. Urging these people to reflect was pointless. I let go of the tiny bit of familial affection I had left and looked at them coldly. Noticing my gaze, all three flinched momentarily but quickly put on a sickeningly sweet smile. We're sorry for everything, okay? Yeah, we're making an effort here, so you should compromise a bit. Their unrepentant attitude made me sigh. I smiled only with my mouth and then asked my mother. Tell me, after being oppressed by a half-sister and real parents, why should I go that far? Different fathers? What are you talking about? Sally is my child. Even after saying so much, my father's lack of understanding was astonishing, but it seemed my mother got the implication. Her face turned pale. Well, what nonsense is this child talking about? If you're trying to dodge the issue, that's fine. But I once saw Mom cheating. Yes, I had seen my mother bringing a man into our house back when I lived there. It was shortly after they got married. Both my father and Henry were on business trips, and Sally was on a trip with friends. It was just my mother and me at home. When I returned from running an errand my mother asked me to do, I found unfamiliar men in the house. I thought we had a visitor. I then heard voices from the bedroom. I wanted to cover my ears. But what I heard next made my eyes widen. He doesn't know Sally isn't his child. Sally isn't Dad's child. I was so shocked I had to cover my mouth with both hands. I wanted to hear more, but sensing they were about to leave the bedroom, I quickly left the house to kill time and returned when I thought the affair partner had left. Curious about that time, I investigated right after marrying Bob. Then it turned out that the man was Ethan, an old friend of my father's. And the affair was still ongoing. Because she's been cheating with him for so long, she threw me out forcibly when Sally wanted Henry because she's Ethan's child. What does that mean? My mother was pale, shaking her head in denial. Seeing this, even my father seemed to understand, his face turning bright red as he glared at her. I decided to give my father the name of the affair partner as a parting gift. Mom's affair partner is Ethan. Ethan! She cheated with him. Even now, yes. My father was dumbstruck. Given that Ethan was considered a close family friend, the betrayal must have hit him especially hard. Yet, I felt no sympathy for my father in that situation. I'm not Dad's child. Sally was also stunned, and no one was attacking me anymore. Are we done here? I've already decided to renounce any inheritance, so you can do as you like from now on. But in return, I won't help. I want nothing to do with you all from here on out. My voice trembled a bit towards the end, but I managed to say everything I wanted to. All right, let's go. I signaled to Bob with a clear mind. And just before leaving the room, I turned around and pulled an envelope from my bag. Oh, right, here. This is the alimony you threw at me. I haven't used it, so it's still the full amount from back then. Consider this a return gift for the baby shower. It's a bit more than you asked for, but think of it as severance money. I said, placing the envelope in front of Sally. Sally was so shocked she didn't move. We left the four of them behind and left my parents' house. Afterward, my parents didn't divorce but became estranged. My mother's actions were severely restricted, and her relationship with Ethan was forcibly ended. My father stepped down from his position as president and tried to live on his pension, but due to his long-standing spending habits, it didn't work out, and he eventually sold the house. I passed by my old home recently and saw it had been demolished, which lifted my spirits a bit. Apparently, they're now living in a rental house, struggling to pay the rent with both of them having to work. My mother, having never worked before, didn't last long at any job. Sally and her husband divorced. And naturally, Sally lives with their children. Unable to support herself and 2 children, she turned to her affair partner, who was already married and currently in the midst of another domestic crisis. Though I could sympathize since we share some blood, thinking of all she had done made me feel she got what she deserved. Henry tried to revive his company alone after the divorce. But the bad reputation spread, leading to lost deals. Eventually, his company went bankrupt. He also fell for a marriage scam through a dating app, losing the alimony Sally paid him and ending up penniless. Now, he's working in construction to pay off his debts. Bob received a call asking for money but firmly refused, saying they were strangers to him. Until the end, Henry was asking for a divorce from me, leaving no room for sympathy. As for me, I'm pregnant with our first child. Bob was overjoyed, already planning a child-first home. And even selecting babysitters, although it's a bit early for that. The baby is a boy. We, having cut ties with their families and being essentially alone, are surrounded by kindness in their community, with neighbors already offering help. Everyone in town is supportive, making us feel our child is blessed to be born into such a warm environment. Daniela, how are you feeling today? Much better today. That's great. Hoping for a healthy baby. Thank you. When we go for walks, everyone greets us warmly, making me glad we moved here. I can't decide between blue and green for the baby's blanket, so I bought both. It's still early for that. While I gently scold Bob for his eagerness, I knit baby socks, planning to finish a week before the due date. Oh, he kicked. Really? It's Daddy here. Bob reacts to my words, talking to my belly. And just then, the baby kicked again. He responded. Daddy loves you so much. Bob, really? Even though I'm a bit exasperated, I can't help but find him adorable. Immersed in this happiness, I start knitting the socks again.